Okay, let's dive right into this. Today we are embarking on an epic 64-year journey through what is literally the pinnacle of global sports, the FIFA World Cup. We're going to trace the history of this incredible tournament, looking at exactly how the torch of greatness has been passed from one generation to the next. From the explosive, jaw-dropping breakthrough of a young Pelé, all the way to Lionel Messi's ultimate, dramatic triumph, let's break down how football's greatest narrative actually unfolded. To make sense of over 6 decades of history, we're breaking this massive timeline into 5 distinct eras. We'll start with the early dynasties, move into the era of titans and tacticians, dive into an age of drama and firsts, explore the modern masterpieces, and then wrap it all up with the legacy of champions. Let's move to Act 1, the Golden Boy and the early dynasties. This is where modern football mythology really begins, you know? It starts with the birth of an absolutely unstoppable dynasty. To get our bearings, let's briefly map out 4 foundational tournaments. We kick things off in Europe with Sweden in '58, jump across the Atlantic to Chile in '62, head back over to England in '66, and then land in North America from Mexico in 1970. 17. Just take a second and think about what you were doing when you were 17 years old. Because back in 1958, a teenager named Pelé stepped onto the pitch at that exact age and completely stole the global spotlight. He didn't just play, he absolutely dazzled the world, helping Brazil defeat Sweden 5-2 in the final and igniting what would become one of the most dominant dynasties in the history of the sport. Now, 1958 was absolutely no fluke, but 4 years later in Chile, disaster struck when Pelé was injured early on. But here's the thing, Brazil's squad was just so incredibly deep that the legendary Garrincha stepped right up and secured a 3-1 victory anyway. Then, by 1966, England claimed their first and so far only title on home soil. That final was wild, taking West Germany to extra time where Geoff Hurst's famous hat-trick sealed the deal. Fast forward to 1970 and Pelé is back. He orchestrates what most people still consider the most beautiful footballing side ever assembled, completely crushing Italy 4-1 and permanently cementing Brazil as football's ultimate powerhouse. Moving right along to Act 2, Titans and Tacticians. As we roll into the mid-70s and 80s, the whole game kind of shifts. This era becomes defined by transcendent, larger-than-life stars and these incredibly intense tactical clashes between South America and Europe. For the next decade, the tournament basically turned into a fierce tug-of-war between Europe and the Americas, stopping in West Germany, Argentina, Spain, and Mexico. It was a fascinating collision, really. You had these rigid team systems going head-to-head with pure, unfiltered superstars. In '74 and '78, the absolute brilliance of Johan Cruyff's total football Dutch squad was just heartbreakingly shut down by the host nations, West Germany and Argentina. Then, 1982, that belonged entirely to Italy's Paolo Rossi, whose golden boot defied all the odds. But man, 1986, that was the tournament of Diego Maradona. He practically single-handedly willed Argentina to a 3-2 victory over West Germany, producing moments of sheer magic that honestly still defy logic today. And this brilliantly illustrates just how fiercely the pendulum of power was swinging. Think about this massive rivalry that developed. Maradona's Argentina edges out West Germany in '86, right? Well, exactly 4 years later in Italy, these two titans clash again. But this time, a really tense, late penalty flips the script, giving West Germany their revenge right on the eve of German reunification. All right, let's step into Act 3, drama, penalties, and firsts. As we hit the 1990s, the tension absolutely skyrockets, and we start seeing the tournament break totally new geographical and historical ground. Following the 1990 tournament in Italy, the World Cup exploded across the globe, conquering new frontiers, the United States, France, and making a massive historic leap over to Asia with Japan and South Korea. But, you know, with this huge global expansion came unimaginable pressure. Just picture it, the blistering heat of Pasadena in '94. Brazil and Italy are completely deadlocked. 90 minutes passed, nothing. 30 minutes of extra time, still scoreless. And so we arrived at this massive, terrifying question that had never actually been asked in a final before. How do you decide a champion when literally nobody can score? The penalty shootout. For the very first time in history, the biggest prize in sports came down to who would blink first from 12 yards out. The tension was just agonizing. It only ended when Italy's talisman Roberto Baggio sent his final kick sailing over the crossbar, handing Brazil a historic 4th title. And those historic milestones, they just kept coming. In 1998, the host nation France rode the absolute majesty of Zinedine Zidane. He scored twice to completely dismantle Brazil 3-0, sparking incredible celebrations across the whole country. Then, in 2002, on Asian soil, Brazil found their redemption. Ronaldo, who was coming back from these awful career-threatening injuries, buried 2 goals against Germany to secure a record-breaking 5th title. Let's move to Act 4, European dominance and the final crown. As we transition into the modern era, the balance of power shifts heavily toward Europe, setting the stage for a truly breathtaking climax. This modern era took the beautiful game on an unprecedented global tour, going from Germany to South Africa, back to Brazil, over to Russia, and finally to Qatar. It was a true global showcase. Yet, strangely enough, it was heavily dominated by just one single continent. So the crucial point here is that for 4 straight tournaments, Europe put an absolute stranglehold on the trophy. It started in 2006, with Italy surviving a super dramatic, controversial final against France on penalties. 4 years later, Spain's intricate passing game finally earned them their first star, all thanks to Andres Iniesta's late extra-time heroics. In 2014, Germany did the unthinkable, breaking South American hearts by becoming the first European nation to win in the Americas. And by 2018, an unstoppable French squad fueled by a young Kylian Mbappe just brushed aside Croatia. Honestly, Europe looked totally invincible. But then, we arrive at Qatar in 2022. Argentina versus defending champion France. A completely breathless 3-3 draw after extra time. It was, without a shadow of a doubt, the most dramatic final ever played. Blow for blow, heavyweight against heavyweight, and when it finally went to penalties, Argentina prevailed. This wasn't just a win, it was like watching destiny unfold. Lionel Messi finally achieved his ultimate dream, securing Argentina's third title and giving football one of its greatest ever endings. Finally, we reach Act 5, the legacy of champions. After tracing this incredible 64-year journey, let's take a step back and look at what all of this history actually leaves us with today. Now, what's really interesting here is that when the dust settles on over 6 decades of history, a very clear hierarchy emerges. Out of all those legendary players and brilliant managers, 3 nations stand way above the rest as the ultimate royalty of the sport. Brazil remains the undisputed king with 5 titles, a legacy that, remember, started with a 17-year-old Pelé. Germany and Italy sit right there behind them with 4 each, undeniably setting the benchmark for excellence across the eras. But the story of the World Cup is far from over, right? From Pelé in 1958 to Messi in 2022, the torch has continually been passed. All those legends we talked about today, they were all once just young players dreaming of this exact stage. So I'll leave you with this question. As new generations dream, who will be the next to step up and lift football's most prestigious trophy?